I'm Jim Collison and live from Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Theme Thursday, Season 2, recorded on May 19th, 2016. Theme Thursday is a Gallup webcast series that dives deep into the CliftonStrengths Finder themes, one theme at a time, and today's theme is focus. Mike, I think we've had anything but focus this morning, so we'll try and rein that back in. If you have questions, comments, or contributions during the webcast, we do have a live chat room. It's available for you right below the main video window. If you just peek down there, there's a chat room available. There's a bunch of people in it right now if you join us live. Easiest way to get logged in the bottom left-hand corner, it says login. Just click on that, choose the guest account, put your name in the section, and hit submit, and you'll join us in there. We will be taking your live questions right there. It actually works on a mobile device as well. If you go click on that link, you can do it right off your phone. If you're listening to the recorded version or need custom strengths coaching solutions for small, medium, or large organizations, contact us, send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center, just Gallup Strengths Center, for all your coaching resources and Strengths Finder training needs. You can also catch the video and both streaming and downloadable audio. We were talking about that in the pre-show for offline listening to past shows, and we might even wrap a few of these, Micah. What do you think? We should start wrapping Theme Thursday?
What rhymes with Thursday? I don't know.
That could be tough. But all those are available, coaching.gallup.com. Micah Librant is our host today. She's my favorite learning development consultant here on the... Don't tell anybody else I said that, by the way.
Keep that one under wraps.
Yes, keep it under wraps. And welcome, Micah, to Theme Thursday.
Thanks, Jim. I think you're just my favorite person. Theme Thursdays just are the best part of my week. I will tell you today, I have zero focus. I actually looked it up on my Strengths Finder because I've never focused long enough to even know what my full 34 is, but it is number 31 for me, which means it's not there, and I am feeling the effects of no focus. This morning, I had a really late flight getting back last night, and I know we teach these things all the time. We say that, your themes don't change when you're tired or when you're not using them on purpose. They probably become amplified. My lack of focus is certainly amplified when I'm tired. So I was thinking about focus and thinking, I just wish somebody could inject some in me. I'm having some serious theme envy today. But my strategic and positivity and love for this theme, I think, are going to get us through it.
I need help, too, to be honest with you. Look, can you see that?
Is it 34?
It's 34, yes. Focus is 34. So
that's a nice little app. Where'd you find that?
Hey, that's available, iPhone, Android. Just go to either one of the stores, type in Strengths Finder. Free. Log in with the account you used when you took your top, when you took Strengths Finder. Boom, it's right there.
Why would you want something like that on your phone? I know it's
sometimes you can't remember
limited.
You can't remember what your top 5 are sometimes, and Micah, all the time, and you probably have this too when we do classes and stuff, and we do a focus on you, and we say, hey, add your top 5. Almost everybody, like 80%, I'm making that number up, but let's just say 80% can remember 4 of 5. It's the weirdest thing. If you're a coach, you've probably seen this happen. They start going through, and they're like, oh, I can only get 4. I don't know why that is, but with the app, they can pull that up. So my interns showed up this Monday. We have 22 interns on campus, tech interns for the summer, and we have already done 2 focus on yous, and I've asked them their top 5. By the way, the more you ask that, the better people will get at it. So if you ask it more often, they'll remember it more often, and so by the second time, over half knew what their top 5 were. There were a few who could only get 4 or 5, but the first time I asked it, man, we barely got 1 or 2 out of it. So inspect what you expect, right? And if you're working with folks and you want them to remember their top 5, you kind of have to ask it pretty regularly so that it'll be top of mind, don't you think?
Absolutely. Okay, so super great segue. This is focus. Here's how we're going to focus on the question of how do you get people to really embed it. This morning I was on a phone call with a friend of mine in Dubai who wants to bring strengths to a brand new organization, and her question was, how do I really do it beyond just the session that we're going to have? And I said, it is how many times can you bring it up, and can you think about casually doing it just like you did, but also bake it into the ether of what you get used to doing. So if you're giving somebody instructions on how to start a project here, or you're thinking about what are the standard expectations, if there's anything in your organization that is already standardized or written into a form, think about where can you sneak strengths into that. Do it on purpose.
Yeah, no, good advice. Well, let's talk about focus. How do we define it?
So, if you take a look at our companion guide, the very top of that companion guide is going to be the short theme definition. That's the same theme, that same definition, the few sentences that you'll find on the theme sequence report, which if you've taken StrengthsFinder through Gallup Strength Center, that's one of the reports you can access. It says people exceptionally talented in the focus theme can take a direction, follow through, and make the corrections necessary to stay on track. They prioritize, then act.
Yeah, you want an airline pilot to have high focus, right? When you think about that, you want a doctor doing surgery, right, to have high focus when you think about these things. What about the theme, the power and edge?
So what makes it powerful? What gives it some positive edge? While others start to wander down divergent avenues, people with strong focus talents stay on the main road. They help others avoid time-consuming distractions and keep everyone on point. Jim, when was the last time you played the game Operation?
Oh, it's been a while, but I still love playing that game whenever I get a chance.
So if you're not familiar with Operation, you've got a guy on a table, and the objective of the game is to use some little tools to pull pieces out of this guy. It sounds really gross, but that's what it is. And if you touch the sides, you get a buzz, and you lose. So it's about how steady is your hand, how can you keep things focused and not hit the sides and really just go straight up and straight out. I think about focus as being the buzzer sometimes in the game Operation, because it's not about the periphery. It's about intense focus toward a single goal.
Micah, oftentimes we talk about when we're in this state, and I forget the name of the state, but when you're using your themes and you're in this, you get this, and you kind of lose track of time, and
Yeah.
what's that? What do we call that? Do you
So
remember?
we call it flow, FLOW. In fact, there's a psychologist, positive psychologist, Csikszentmihalyi, who won the CliftonStrengths Prize for his work in flow. And a great way to describe that is the intersection between creativity and productivity, that moment when time seems to disappear. It's one of the 5 clues to talent that Don Clifton actually studied as he was developing StrengthsFinder and looking for how do you know if something's a real innate talent versus maybe just something you think you love. What are you doing when time disappears? I think people with high focus almost experience flow as part of the definition of the theme. It's that ability to really be in the zone.
Yeah, and I guess what I was going to say is you can have flow in any of these themes, and it will sound like, because you're using the definition of focus, it'll sound like, well, hey, so for me, focus being low, does that mean I can never be in flow? And I would say no. There's been times I have definitely been in that state using a ranger activator, right? Or woo communication. This happened just the other morning. I was talking to the interns. We'd done an early morning stand up to kind of get them going for the day. I had a half an hour, and it felt like 5 minutes. And all of a sudden I looked at my watch and I was like, oh, you guys are late for your next meeting, because I'd gotten in flow with woo communication. And I was very, very focused to the point where I lost track of time. So I wanted to differentiate between the two, because I think some people would think maybe I can only have that kind of flow if I have focus, but we would say that's not true, right?
No, we would say strengths, in the way that that they're in fact researched, lead you to flow in every single one of the 34. So tell me more, woo communication, Jim. How many people were in that state with you? Or how many people were you interacting with when you were in that state?
Yeah, we had 20 in the room at the time, and all our new interns. And we were kind of going over, like, okay, so questions and how's it going so far? And we had done a focus on you, and so, for me, that's always a great way to start a meeting. A little focus on you, get people talking about each other. They were meeting each other for the first time. I get to know a little bit about them, and I just slipped into the zone. I mean, all of a sudden, I was like, I don't care what's next, even though we had a whole agenda of things to go, for the day. And it was first thing in the morning, right, 8:30 to 9. That flow, I distinctly remember getting into it, talking. We were just having this great dialogue back and forth with them. And they were locked in, right? We're just having this great communication. I totally lost track of time.
Dialogue back and forth, interaction with a lot of brand new people, that first connection of introducing them to each other, that is probably flow for woo plus communication, or woo-munication nirvana, to be pithy around it. If you had focus, you probably would have omitted the part of that story where you said, I didn't care what was next. because
Right.
people with high focus would be in that area of, let me get people to what's next. Let me maybe see the process of introducing people as something that we can achieve, and then bring us back toward where are we going next. It's that constant attention to the end goal and the ability to turn down the noise everywhere else and only get us toward that goal.
No, that's great. Let's zero in on, speaking of focus, let's focus a little bit on raw and mature.
Yeah, so follow me on this one. It might take a little bit. Raw focus is eating an elephant. Mature focus is starting with the elephant's right front leg. So what I mean by that is, and this comes from that question of how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. I think because focus has such intense prioritization ability, sometimes it can say, I'm focusing on the very end goal. If you think about looking down a pipe, focus sees what's at the very end. It might not matter how long the pipe is. It might not matter what kind of bumps or grooves are in that pipe. Focus really is about where are we going at the very end. So without maybe some other complementary themes, focus alone can think about, I'm just going to swallow the whole elephant. It's about that entire piece all at once. That's probably raw focus, is talking about the entire goal and not doing anything else except for that one goal. That could be a little bit paralyzing. Mature focus says, okay, there might be some mini goals in between, the first bite and the entire elephant. I'm sorry, this sounds like poaching. My son loves to watch The Lion Guard, and he would hate if I realized we're talking about consuming elephants. But thinking about what are some of those milestones along the way, and how can I be just as intensely focused on some of those milestones, see them as priorities, and then act, understanding that is going to get us to the end goal.
Yeah, I love the next one because I think this comes in when we think about theme bias. I think focus gets this bad rap for this. So why don't you talk about that?
So I think raw focus is intolerant of distraction. I've had this happen around other folks with high focus where they can't quite entertain other people's lack of focus or inefficiency. It comes across as inefficiency, and that sort of intolerance of anything that might be noisy can come across as frustration, as panic, as apathy even. I think the mature version of that is quickly guiding people back toward the goal. Understanding that nobody else is going to have your same flavor of focus, that perhaps other people around you are getting there in a more meandering track, whereas focus wants to sort of laser beam toward it. Mature focus appreciates that other people don't work that way and can be the guide. In fact, if you think back to that power and edge piece, focus talents stay on the main road. If they're staying on that main road alone, that might be fine if they're an independent contributor, but I think real mature focus can say, hey, everybody, let's come back to the main road.
Yeah, and I think sometimes focus gets a bad rap for not being able to live in the moment. In other words, sometimes, especially when we think of if you're in software development, agile methodology is a big deal right now. Everybody's talking about it and pivoting quickly and some of those kinds of things. And people with focus get this rap of holding others back. But Micah, it's not always just about rigidity, right? When we think of focus, and especially in its mature state, can you talk about can focus adapt?
Yeah, it can. I think that what focus brings to the ability to adapt is the ability not to just adapt to anything. Bring it back to your software piece. I think it can be really easy to, see, oh gosh, I think the market's going this way. I think consumers want that. I think we want that. Adaptability, to contrast it, adaptability would be about, let me give people exactly what they're hungering for the moment that they're hungering for it. The way that focus would adapt is, let me be a voice of execution and help us understand what might be the cost of adapting and prioritize to the best place to adapt. So I think if you were to throw a brand new idea at somebody with high focus, they would immediately be able to say, here's where we are already. versus somebody maybe without focus who couldn't quite understand the cost benefit analysis of if we pivot, what is that going to do instead. I think somebody with high focus is incredible at thinking about the actual meaning of the word priority, which comes from meaning only one. In our sort of hectic, more chaotic world, we start to use the word priorities, and it could be 10 or 12, or depending on how many different teams you're on. Maybe you've got 5 for each team. What focus helps us to really do is say, but what's the one thing? Where are we actually going? And focus can be incredibly passionate as well. It's that passionate drive toward where we're going. So imagine if that focus was not necessarily on a specific goal, but on being with another human or on developing a relationship. If you translate it that way into a goal, it can feel what I imagine, some people really make you feel like you're the only person in the room. I think focus could do that if the goal was to do it.
Yeah. And in a friendship, in the context of relationships, that focus can be really, really powerful when dealing with people. I know I get lost. It's one-on-one. I'm good for about 5 minutes, and then it's kind of like, hey, can we talk about me again? That kind of deal. And so it's super important in those contexts of relationships, and I think can be that real superpower that we talk about all the time of really locking in with someone and knowing, as a coach who has high focus, man, you got a great superpower to be able to lock in on someone and really pay attention, right?
Yeah. I have a good friend with focus, and when he would come into the office, we were working in the same office. When he would come into the office, I need to warm up to the day, and I need to do that by talking to people. I need to know, what'd you do last night? How's your morning going? What kind of coffee are you drinking? I always noticed that every morning he would walk straight past my office and into his, and I thought at that time that he just wasn't interested in knowing what kind of coffee I was drinking or making that connection. And for a while, I was a little bit hurt by it. And then at one point we were talking about focus, and I said, well, what is it for you? And he said, it's the minute I click my seatbelt when I get into my car to drive into work. That sound, it puts me into focus mode, and I am already halfway through my day of evaluating what needs to happen, thinking about the priorities that I have, and moving forward. He goes, sometimes I don't even remember getting into the office until I'm at my computer and I sit down. And I realized it wasn't that he was ignoring me, it was that he was in that zone. It was that powerful.
Yeah. Let's talk about one more pairing that we have with raw and versus mature.
Sure. I think raw focus is independent. This isn't bad, but mature focus is integrated. So being able to say, be the guide of the group back to what we need to be focusing on, be the compass of what are we executing. Really great ways to build upon focus and to invest in it is to think, work independently if you can, but the value you could bring to a team maybe is to be the one who says, okay, all of our thoughts have driven us to XYZ, and be very specific about, okay, what is that goal now that we're zeroing in on?
Yeah. Carol Ann in chat says, focus definitely helps me. They're having a little conversation on their own, by the way. This is one of the benefits to joining us live. It's a show within a show. She says, focus definitely helps me with people. I can focus in on all of the things that they do and are. It's fascinating. I sense that, when I'm meeting with someone and they're able to kind of use that focus and keep up, because I'm in a one-on-one situation, I can be tough to keep up with, right? Mm-hmm. But that person with focus can just kind of zero in, and man, it makes me feel important. I mean, I can't overemphasize that power of focus to be able to feel that, and I think even in a team setting, someone who can provide leadership with focus can oftentimes make a team feel that way, that they have their undivided manager's attention, or fill in the blank, right, from a leadership standpoint.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great way to build compassion if you're thinking about it from a leadership standpoint. Undivided
not
attention.
A word, by the way, I would use with focus is compassion, right? I think that's an amazing observation, because we don't think of focus as being compassion, and yet now that you say that, I can totally see it. Can you tease that out a little bit more, Micah, when you meet that?
Let's not misunderstand focus. It's an executing theme. It's about getting things done by doing one thing at a time and having a lot of energy around that one thing. If that one thing is, let's say I'm a leader, and maybe that one thing is inspiring my people, then I think it is I'm fully present with you. I am executing upon inspiring you. So I am 100%, all cashed in, all my chips are in on being with you. Now, somebody with other themes they're going to be present with people because of the nature of that theme. Whereas I think with focus, you can be completely present with people and also present with the situation that a person is in. You're not necessarily feeling what they're feeling, but you are giving all your attention to where that person is, what they're saying, what they're doing. It might be a little bit more about how you're thinking about it and how you're doing the focusing rather than just it happening naturally, like something with empathy would just be there and feel what other people are feeling. I think focus can be compassionate by saying you're the most important relationship in the room right now, or you're the most inspiring you, helping you achieve your goals. Those are my goals too. When focus shares some of that execution with things that might be important to other people as well, I think that's how we get to that compassionate state of leadership.
Yeah, you talked about focus and empathy. We got some complementary themes we've listed out. What about focus and harmony?
Yeah, so I just teased out maybe what could 3 different complementary themes be. When we talk about complementary themes, I mean themes that other people might have that would make a great partnership. I thought about harmony first because harmony hungers for efficiency. What harmony wants is let's not waste time in places where we disagree. If there's a place where we can all get on the same page, we can move forward. And harmony deals with emotion to get there. I was speaking with somebody yesterday who had high harmony, and I said, do you always know when there's a lack of harmony? And he looked at me as if I was an idiot, like, well, yeah, doesn't everybody? And so it's that quick sensing of, when are people not agreeing? When is there going to be some possible contention? I think that's similar to focus because focus hungers for efficiency and can sense when obstacles are going to get in our way or when things that aren't quite as important are going to get in our way. And so if you land on that same desire, thirst for efficient forward progress, I think focus brings it from a tactical perspective of what are we executing, and harmony can bring it from an emotional perspective. So somebody with focus partnering with somebody with harmony would expand their reach on how we can be more efficient. What harmony would bring is that emotional litmus test that says, all right, we're moving forward in this direction, and here's maybe some places where it's not going to work. So think about harmony as being the emotional advisor to the execution of focus.
Yeah. As we work through these complementary themes, it's kind of interesting as you were talking about that. So say I have focus high. There's really 2 roles as you look at other people and say when we look at harmony, either high or low in their themes, it's one area. If it's high for them, how can I assist, right? How can I be an assistant in joining that together? And then when it's low, how can I help amplify that up in there, right? Because for me, like I have focus low. So someone who had it high, they would be, how can they help me in those areas, right? In assist or in amplifying it up in me. So I'd like people to think through that, right? As we think through these complementary pairs, we oftentimes think about them in ourselves. But what do they look like when we match them up with somebody outside? That's the power of 2, right? As we do that. So we also want to look at futuristic.
Yeah, the reason I thought about futuristic was because I also thought about how that might be different from another theme. So I think futuristic plus focus, what futuristic could bring is where are these goals going to help us to go? Different than if you partnered with someone with developer, which would say which of these goals will help others to grow. Both of them, I think, help position the focus because focus, it isn't strategic. I mean, it's not the theme of strategic. It's not a strategic thinking theme. So focus is how do I get this done? It might not necessarily be how does this connect to something bigger, but it could be if you had somebody with futuristic or developer.
Mm-hmm. What about developer?
I think developer, we talked about it quite recently here, and I've heard a lot of feedback around our theme Thursday on developer. It's how do I constantly pay attention to the forward progress of other humans? And when you think about that with focus, maybe that's an example of how focus feels like compassion. It could be also maybe how focus feels like stability. So thinking about how do I help people understand where they are right now and come up with maybe some very intensely passionate goals around how how they could get better. If you think about somebody with developer partnering with somebody with focus, I think what focus could bring to that partnership is a laser beam toward what actually matters. And what developer could bring toward that is, let's make sure that what we're prioritizing is going to have a residual effect on helping people learn, helping people grow, and helping people change in a positive way.
That's good. Good advice. When we think about likely and unlikely pairs out of our database, what's the unlikely?
The least likely to show up with focus in someone's top 5, it happens something like 3% of the time, is the theme of connectedness. Now, it can happen. Connectedness is that holistic view on the world, sort of sensing the reason behind things, even if you don't need to know the reason, understanding there is a reason there. Lack of coincidence is how we describe connectedness. If you had both focus and connectedness, I imagine that to be allowing you to progress against goals that are born from a holistic view. I mean, it's not rocket science putting these two together. It's sort of a spiritual nature of what you decide to execute upon.
And what about likely? What's the most likely pairing?
Most likely pairing, 55% of the time. And that doesn't mean if you have focus, you've got a 55% chance exactly of having this other one, but over half of the folks who have focus in their top 5 also have the theme of achiever. And I think that is milestones toward a goal. The end result, begin with the end in mind, that's focus. Achiever is the energy it probably takes to get in between where I am today and where I'm going. So high achiever likes to understand forward progress at all times. Now, you don't have to have both. Focus without achiever is probably a little bit more long-term energy, whereas focus plus achiever might be a little bit more about what did I do today to execute on where we're going. My husband has both of these in his top 5. And my best story around this was when I brought him, we together went on a vacation, and I happened to be working the entire time. So I said, you know what, it's a great location. We've got a comfy hotel. Just come and relax. Not the best thing to say to an achiever. But I imagined, while I was at work during the day, maybe he'd sit by the pool, maybe he'd, have a pina colada, hang out. No, it turns out he discovered it was about season 2 at that time of Game of Thrones, and we'd never watched it before. He discovered Game of Thrones and downloaded the entire first and second season, and in like a day made it through every single episode. And I don't think he saw or worried about or needed to waste time on anything but everything about that TV series. Yeah. And it was that beautiful combination of being zeroed in and seeing a great, I mean, for him it was the best way to spend a vacation was I'm doing nothing else but this one thing, and I can see that ticker, going forward for every episode that I've watched and how much I have left, and he was still, excited about it enough to allow me to come back and watch them again. so I got to catch up with them. But
you processed them completely different when you got to them, right?
Totally. Yeah. Well, what's interesting about it is now, okay, so we're season 5 right now of Game of Thrones, I think. But now, when he watches them, especially multiple times, he speeds through the previously on section, which is at the very beginning. It's the equivalent of seeing a movie trailer every single time you watch an episode, because to him that's extraneous. Focus doesn't need it. It's that ability to sort through what's really going to get us toward our goal. Watching 2 minutes of what I already watched is not going to tell me anything, so he speeds through those. It's probably one of the arguments we have most often. We don't argue very much, but this is what we argue over, because I have high strategic, and for me those are the 2 most important minutes of the entire hour, because that's going to give me clips of what I should be paying attention to, what the showrunners think is the most important things for us to remember, and then I think the entire time about how am I going to figure out what the clues and the cues and the patterns are of what's coming up that's going to be significant in the future. So totally different, I think, lens on what we're doing, but to bring us back, focus plus achiever, milestones toward a goal.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense too when we think about the goals for both achievers and those with high end focus and getting those things done. So I think this is a good dialogue. Any kind of final thoughts before we dig into the theme dynamics part?
I think one of the biggest values of focus is that they can continue to progress forward even through mess, even through chaos. And our world isn't getting any less messy. So it's going to become increasingly important, I think, for leaders with focus to be able to talk about how do we turn down the noise of everything that's extraneous. In a world, even in a social media world where we can select the news that hits us, it's sometimes really difficult to get that full grasp on what's the real story that's happening here. And I think people with high focus can say, what's the story that affects our priorities? How do we understand exactly what's happening, and how do we keep moving forward? I think there can be great hope in focus if leaders can say, it doesn't matter what else is swirling around us, we can move forward here, and we can constantly remind ourselves of, what is the priority, what does the end goal look like. Be that compass of how do we execute. I think if you've got high focus, find roles or ways of going about your roles where you get to be the voice of, okay, I understand change happened, but what have we committed to and how are we progressing forward to it? That might be something as simple as, after a brainstorming meeting, reminding people of what we just agreed to do, and maybe putting due dates to that, maybe putting some of those miniature milestones toward it, because you're going to have energy to execute upon it. Maybe be that voice to help others do it in a cleaner way. That being said, allow other people to create some mess, because you might pick up on pieces that otherwise you never would have seen. Focus, I think, can be, we're going to talk about this in a moment, but focus can be similar to strategic in that it can be very quick to filter out things that don't matter. And I think sometimes that means focus can miss perhaps some great opportunities. So don't think that you have to be messy, but maybe think of a partner who can be a little bit messy for you, and who maybe some ideation, maybe again some futuristic. Allow other people to be inefficient, and then think about picking out some of those pieces that maybe could improve your goal that you're working toward. I also think sometimes with focus, it's important to define some priorities outside of work. It can be really easy to zero in on only what you have to do all the time. And then there can come some frustration if work isn't straightforward, or if you're not progressing toward a goal that's important to you. And that's where it's also very important to think about, how does focus help not only your performance but your own well-being. So think about what kinds of intense energy and passion you could put that execution strength toward within your family, within your community, within your network and your social experiences as well.
I think focus is an incredibly important. They're all important, right, when we think about this. But those of you who are high in focus, since I'm a 34 man, exploit that theme that you have, because it can be super powerful. We say this every week, right, into the superpower of your theme. But as a 34 guy at the bottom, I understand, and as a leader and a manager, I see the value. I mean, I see an incredible value in it. And so people who have it, do not let that stay in a raw state.
Yeah.
Really begin to exercise it and really begin to use it in a way, because we need it, right? It's one of those things we need, especially in getting stuff done. We need that, and so don't let it sit dormant. Find ways to practice it. Find ways to get it used. Gravitate towards jobs where it's honored from that standpoint or needed.
I think sometimes focus gets a bad rap because we say, oh, focus can't multitask.
Right.
Oh my gosh. I would love more people around me who weren't multitasking. The truth of it is, focus hates multitasking and probably can't do it well, and that can be an amazing thing.
Yeah.
I think oftentimes maybe even give voice to that. Be that that inner Jiminy Cricket of the importance of doing one thing at a time and doing it really well. I don't think anybody can truly multitask, but certainly people with high focus have an awareness of when we're trying to do that and failing. So if you can think about giving voice to, if you're frustrated and you have high focus, it's probably because we're working on things that aren't connected to the goal that we're moving toward. Let us know that. Let the rest of us who don't have focus know that, and think about gently guiding us back toward where we need to be going.
No, and you said, focus can't multitask, and Carol Ann wants to differ with you. Your other themes kick in there, and we all know. In fact, focus in multitasking may be something that benefits multitasking because you can focus and unfocus very, very
Oh,
quickly.
absolutely.
Yeah,
But I think there's plenty of research on actual multitasking. It says we're
right.
never actually doing two things at
No,
once.
we're
I
not good.
think your focus can be very fast at saying I'm over here and now I'm over there, and that probably looks like multitasking. But I think what great focus can help us do is say it's most important that we look in one place and let's be in that one place.
No, right on. I'm going to set up theme dynamics. Micah, why don't you share a little bit about what we're doing here?
So what we're doing here, super cool. This comes from the book Expanding Your Strengths, which is an ebook available on Amazon in most markets. Hopefully by the time everybody hears this, it'll be available everywhere. When you purchase the book, you get access to this cool app, which is a drop-down menu to take a look at what does one theme plus another theme look like. And this really, folks, this is the artistic take to our science, but there's something pretty important about theme dynamics, which might come, Carol Ann, back to why you can multitask with focus. It probably has to do with what flavor of focus you have, depending on what the other ingredients are around it. And by ingredients, I mean the rest of your themes. So the concept of theme dynamics is that no person is any one theme, and that in real life, these don't exist as static, standalone patterns of behavior, but they play with others. They bounce off of others. They borrow motivation from other themes. So on our Called to Coach Facebook page this week, as we do every week, we asked you to vote on which other themes, so there's 33 others other than focus, we asked you to nominate the top 4 themes that you wanted us to think about. What kind of a dynamic do they create when they're blended together with focus? So you can take a look now. Jim's pulled up what does this app look like, themedynamics.gallup.com. Access to that app comes with the book. What we're going to look at here first is focus plus strategic, and sometimes I think these two almost get confused, or they could look very similar, because focus is about very quickly laser beam in on what you're doing in order to do it. It's that executing theme. Strategic is very quickly moving forward on the plan that makes the most sense, and what strategic does is it discards some of the patterns that don't add up. So that sort of discarding what's noisy, I think, is similar between these two. What's different is strategic is that spending time looking for patterns and thinking about it. Strategic doesn't necessarily need to make any progress, where focus does. When you blend them together, they sound like this. Your mind is open to considering multiple options, but once you have chosen an option, those you have not chosen become invisible to you.
No, that's I love the way that ends. I kind of picture a bunch of words that are moving around as you're trying to think through what you want. You choose the one and the others just kind of fade away.
How cool. Yeah, I like that.
Out. That's pretty cool. Let's look at focus and learner.
Yeah, so another strategic thinking theme here. Learner is all about mastery of new things all the time. So that constant curiosity, that desire to know more. When you blend it with focus, it sounds like this. In many cases, your interests shape your intentions, but there are also times when your intentions shape your interests. A focus plus learner, to me, that says all-nighter before the final, right? So being able to really give great, passionate execution toward what you're learning.
Yeah, and not necessarily an all-nighter because you have to, but an all-nighter because you want to.
Because time disappears when you're learning about something, because you're executing upon mastering something. Oftentimes, people with high learner that I'm coaching will tell me that they get bored quickly. I think if you have focus and learner, it's probably pretty important to know what's going to come after that end goal that you're looking at. So you might not get bored as quickly if you have focus plus learner, because you're really looking into what you're doing. It's almost like it turns up the volume on what you're learning, but it probably would be pretty important to know, once I get to this end goal, begin with the end in mind, what's the next thing that I can learn? So think about maybe a certification process, or not just what's good, but what's wizardry level of what I'm mastering.
Yeah, good points. I picked up a couple interns this week that have significance, and so let's look at, and boy, you can see it right away. Focus and significance.
I hope that you're loving on them, because that's such a cool theme there. So significance is an influencing theme. It's all about sorting to very important work, helping other people see the importance in what you do, looking at being a part of something bigger than just yourself, and helping other people to think about that as well. So when you think about blending that with focus, it's able to concentrate on important outcomes. You keep your eye on the prize. Comfortable with visibility, others can watch you. I think when you add significance to focus, it's not just doing a bunch of important things. It's sorting to what's most important and then diligently following through on that. So think about just the simplicity of adding an influencing theme to an executing theme. It's I'm rolling up my sleeves right next to you, and I'm doing it in a way that makes you want to work just as hard as I am. So the fact that it's focus and significance is, maybe I'm working together with people, or maybe I'm thinking about how do I make sure what we are doing is going to be purposeful.
Let's look at focus and responsibility.
Yeah, so two executing themes now. I think these probably happen pretty regularly together. I'm just going to guess. I don't have the data behind it, but responsibility is about following through on what I've promised, and focus is about passionately getting toward my goal. So I think it probably adds a commitment element to focus, and by that I mean an external commitment. I almost think these are I almost think there's a lot of similarity between these. Focus is sort of internal. I'm progressing toward my goal. Responsibility might have a little bit more of an external locus of execution control, whereas I'm progressing toward the goal that I promised somebody I would do. When you put them together, it sounds like this. Your goal orientation is tempered by your service orientation. Responding to the needs of others is your primary priority.
That's powerful.
Isn't it?
Yeah, responding to, I mean, you just think, yeah, it just really is. I love the way they put these together. These are incredible. Next week, we're going to talk about futuristic. Why don't you tee that up, and then let's look at the combo of these two.
So it's a strategic thinking theme. It's about not getting stuck in the moment, but thinking about where's the moment going to take us. Very often when I speak with people with high futuristic, I'll ask them, how far out is your brain working? And sometimes they'll say anywhere between a year and 5 or 10 years into the future. It's a big gap, I know, but the thing that they all have in common is that they can tell me, it's someplace in the future. I'm not lost on where we are right here. So futuristic's a super cool theme. If you think about having a leader with futuristic and their ability to sort through maybe how, if it feels bad right now, that's okay, because I'm already thinking about where we're going. So it can be a pretty compassionate, hopeful theme there. It's about making sense of the present by looking toward where we're going. When you put that with focus, if you had both of them as a human being, it sounds like this. Your future dreams become realities when you concentrate your daily efforts on each incremental step along the way. I think focus helps to realize futuristic. If you think about having both of them, it's I know where we're going, and I have a lot of passion to get us toward what the priorities are that are going to get us there.
No, it's pretty cool. I always often think of those two together as being this. I have this statement. I say, we overestimate what we can do in a month and underestimate what can be done in a year, because oftentimes not everybody is good at thinking that far out. And I think of this combo as being that one who gets it done and more in a year because they've thought that far out and been able to plan it. The journey of a mile begins with the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step, and it's being able to see both the 1,000 miles and the daily steps that have to go into it to get it done. So a powerful combo. Micah, as we kind of wrap focus, I'll invite folks to look at that second page of the companion guide. We oftentimes focus just on the first, but there's an interesting box in there that says the role I play, and we'll do a little role playing right now. If you're listening live or on the recorded version, turn that over, take a look. We've got some words there when you think the role I play, words that describe who I am, and I want you to circle what are these describing words. And so we have words like concentrator or rudder. I love that word, rudder, right? Kind of steering the ship, so to speak. And by the way, a rudder with a very tiny space can control big, gigantic processes, right? And I think that's just a great description of someone with focus coming into an organization, being able to steer it because they're so good at it with very little effort, right? So rudder, guide, prioritizer, director, goal setter. I'd love for you to circle one of those, or 2 or 3, and really think about that. How are you using that to change your performance this week? Like, what can you do in what you're currently doing to maximize? I hate to use that word because it's like defining one theme with another, but how can you do that to maximize your theme of focus? How can you make it better? Because Micah, that's what we're here to do, right? We're here to
Yeah.
make better versions of ourselves. This isn't just a naming for naming's sake, but anything you would give as you think about that as a coach?
Yeah, I think it's important to realize that there's a developmental process to Clifton Strengths Finder, that what we're going to tell you when you take the assessment is where your most natural patterns lie. Then it's up to you, or maybe up to you with a coach, to think about, how do I invest in those? How do I really do them on purpose? And the quick and dirty idea that I like to remind people of, if you're dedicated to strengths, if you're trying to manage somebody from a strengths-based perspective, it's about being committed to being curious about, what do these people need in order for their strengths to thrive. So, if you circled rudder, what do you need in order to be the best rudder this week? What kinds of habits or relationships or clarity do you need in order to do that? And how can you ask for it? Nobody's going to be a better educator of others of how to treat you than you. So think about, are there any tiny tweaks that I could make at the beginning of things, at the end of things, through the middle of things, that would allow that focus to really, really drive forward. And Jim, I love this interactivity here. What I would also encourage you to do is look up the top box there where it says characteristics, words that describe me, and think about which one of those best describes your flavor of focus. Are you a goal-oriented rudder? Or are you a driven rudder? What are you feeling like today, depending on the other themes that you have playing there? Are you a progress-aware director? And is that different maybe to you? So those characteristics are all going to fit focus, but they might not all fit every single person with focus. It gives you that opportunity to develop your language, talk about it in more than one way, so that you can continually get closer to a world where you really bring the best of yourself every single day.
Yeah. And one more encouragement I would give too is we have a set of cards that are called values cards, and they kind of help you sort to your values. And I think oftentimes when we think about how are we going to maximize, how are we going to amplify, that's probably a better word, how are we going to amplify the themes as they sit in our top 5? And I think oftentimes our values dictate that. And so people, if you sat the average person down on the street and said, what are your values? They may really struggle to tell you just right off the bat. But these values cards give them some statements that allow you to quickly sort. We do this in some of our coaching sessions that we do, to kind of quickly sort to that, and then take those values and really start looking, okay, because this is my value, how am I going to emphasize this with fill in the theme, in this case focus? Have you, Micah, any other thoughts? As we do a lot of things with those value cards, but any other thoughts on that?
I think they're probably just as important as strengths in terms of getting comfortable with them and being able to remember them. There's no right or wrong answer when you sort through those values cards, which, by the way, you can get at shop.gallup.com.
But I'm always accused of the one saying that, so I'm glad you did.
I'll do it because they're helpful, and they can change. There's no right or wrong. It's more about your own ability to, again, get those feelings, get those inclinations outside your head and your heart and into a place where they can become part of your relationships. I was trying to think about the last time I did it, and I could only think of 4 that I picked out of my top 5. But they're things that would go with any set of themes. So mine were community, altruism, family, love. And I think it really gives us that opportunity to say, where are you focusing your strengths right now? Where is your energy of those strengths aimed toward? And it can be a really helpful exercise if you're a coach trying to say, where do I take this next? It can also be a really helpful way to say, okay, if your strengths don't feel like they're fitting you right now in the standard static definition, maybe it has something to do with how your strengths play in relationship to those values.
Yeah, simple exercise. Pull those cards out and just begin to sort, and start thinking, maybe pick top 3 or top 5, and then sort those into top 3, and then have some discussions around them. We get questions on the Facebook group all the time. I'm doing group activities. What kinds of things have people done in the past? I have yet to see the value card exercise come up in our Facebook group. It just means that maybe it's an underutilized tool that we have, and it's a great way to start with a new group, because not everybody, we have inherent values that we know we have, but sometimes vocalizing them are difficult. And I know it's difficult for me. It's just one of those kinds of things like, oh, I like to eat, and you're like, that's my value, food. having those statements in front of you oftentimes bring them to top of mind. So some tools we made available.
Yeah. I think it's a one more way. Great strengths coaches don't sort of take a list of strengths and say, "Here's your prescription," but they're constantly searching for openings, constantly searching for how can I ask great questions that help people discover more of themselves. So it's a great way to sort of break through some walls and search for openings.
Yeah. Well, certainly two self-admitted, low in focus folks talking about focus today. I think we stayed on track pretty well. I'm not going to lie.
So.
Micah, we'll continue this conversation out in the Facebook group. So if you want to join us out there, facebook.com/group/called2coach. Of course, Called to Coach is our other webcast that we do each week, kind of for the coaches, but you don't have to be a coach to be interested in helping people. Maybe you're a manager, maybe you just work with people. And so we bring in some of our best coaches from around the world to just talk about what they're doing. It's very easy to listen to. Again, you can listen to it. Oh, I wrote this down. Let me see. On your feet, on the seat, on a train, or in a plane. We're trying to be more Dr. Seuss-ish with that. A great way to consume our webcast every single week is to get it done that way. Micah, any final thoughts on focus before I wrap it?
Yep, a quote from someone called Josh Billings. Be like a postage stamp. Stick to one thing until you get there.
Ooh, I like it. That's a good metaphor. Indeed. We'll remind everyone to take full advantages of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strength Center. That's just gallupstrengthcenter.com. Send us your questions, comments. If you'd like to even be a guest blogger, we look for those sometimes too. Not everyone is able to, but send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. Put guest blogger in the email. Those actually go to Micah, so you know the person those go to.
So bring them on.
That's right. We'd love to see them. We will consider those, and of course, if they make it, we'll ask you to write those up, and we will then post them to, I'm going to say, a site that's a little bit on fire right now. If you haven't been out to coaching.gallup.com, the numbers are up, and we are reaching 750,000 views to that blog. I think we're going to hit it here pretty quick. So
I think sometime we should tell the story of complementary partnerships that got that blog where it is, because I fell flat on my face trying to manage it on my own.
I came along and said, "Hey, can I help?"
Partners.
Yeah, and then we have joined a great team when we think of Kate and Jessica and Stephanie, who come alongside us and make sure that thing looks good and looks great, and so we appreciate those partners as well. We'll also remind you to on the coach's blog is the links to our Facebook group, YouTube page, iTunes, and RSS feeds, the iPhone and Android apps that we talked about, including the complete schedule of all the Theme Thursdays that we're doing for 2016 are available in the tab. It says GWSW. Just click that tab and everything is out there. They're all on the coach's blog, coaching.gallup.com. If you're interested in becoming a Gallup certified coach, we've got some information for you on that as well. A list of all of our courses and the way to get that done is out on our courses site. Just go to courses.gallup.com. If you have questions, you want to send an email in, just send it certification@gallup.com. And don't forget, there is also a contact form right there on the live page. So if you want to click on that, that's available for you. If you're interested in discovering all 34 of your talent themes, we do have an all 34 report upgrade available for you. It's on the Gallup Strength Center. Just go to gallupstrengthcenter.com. If you found this webcast helpful, and we know you do, one, let us know. We love to hear from you. It's always great to hear back from you and the encouragement that you give us. That keeps us going each and every week. But really, we ask you to share it. That'd be great. We've heard stories, Micah, of up to 200 people in an auditorium watching these Theme Thursdays, and they're going through the companion guides. Get one and then print it out. That's okay. We'll allow that. And run folks through it. I've heard of small groups doing this. I've heard of coaches doing meetups featuring these Theme Thursdays. Guys, they're free and they're available to you, so don't forget to use them. We'll ask you to share them. And with that, thanks, Micah. We'll say goodbye, everybody.